it's all about the 88 constellations, and it is a poem that explores all of these things. And I'm absolutely fascinated in your work. He's a diplomat as well as a poet, and both of us have an interest in the monsoon. My previous book, an edited collection of essays, was on monsoon feelings, a history of the emotions in the rain, and Abhay's last big poem was on the monsoon, and this is another book about another huge natural phenomenon. So first the monsoon, and now the constellations of the entire, visible to the entire globe. And these are phenomena that have affected human societies since Homo sapiens first stood on two legs. And perhaps even before that. And I'm really intrigued, what is it that you find so inspiring about these large-scale natural phenomena that affect humans so much that you want to express it in poetry?
Thank you, Catherine and William, for launching the book. It's a special joy to have you launch the book, because I saw you tweeting, you both of you kind of exchanging tweets on Ulugh Beg of Samarkand, and I thought that there couldn't be more appropriate persons who have interest in Ulugh Beg's work. So this is Celestial, as Catherine mentioned. It's a love poem actually, that takes you to 88 star constellations visible from Earth. And the book is illustrated by the works of a 10th century Persian astronomer, al-Rah.mān al-Sufi, and his book, The Book of Fixed Stars. So Catherine just mentioned that, it's for the very first time that we are meeting each other, but Catherine was very kind to give a shout out or give a blurb to my last poetry book, Monsoon, which is one poem of 150 stanzas, and takes you from Madagascar to Kashmir through a love poem of 150 quatrains. So nature, particularly, I think, is a spiritual solace, a home for me. I find nature as something that I can always go back to. As what Walt Whitman says, that you can exhaust, if you're exhausted from business, from politics, from anything else, nature remains. Nature is still there for you. Because nature never asks something back from you. You can always go back to nature and find inspiration. Today morning I read about, the best song is the bird song. But for that you have to be quiet, really quiet. That's what Wendell Berry says. And I feel that way, I think he speaks for me. So.
Yes, absolutely. And if you can, forgive a personal anecdote. So I was born in Australia. I moved to England in 1996, so I've been there for a long time. But I grew up in Brisbane, and we had a small farm in the foothills of the Great Dividing Range, and with nothing there, really. And at night, you could see the stars absolutely crystal clear. And my father, who was a very keen outdoors man, taught me the names of all the stars. The Southern Cross, the magnificent Orion, which is also visible from the Northern Hemisphere. And those of you who are interested in early forms of navigation by the stars, one of the things about living, in the Pacific or on the edge of the Pacific is the connections with the incredible Polynesian navigators who, long before Europeans, sailed into the Pacific, were navigating very long oceanic distances from Hawaii to New Zealand, by the stars, and they saw their ship unusually as stationary and the stars as moving around them. So this incredible importance of the southern stars. And if anybody's interested, there is actually an event here on Monday on Endeavour, the ship that Captain Cook took to Otaheite, and with the help of Polynesian navigators, made his own way around the Pacific in the late 18th century. But when I moved to the Northern Hemisphere, I just found it incredibly disorienting. Not knowing the names of the stars, not being able to recognize them, and this will be unusual to most of you who grew up in the Northern Hemisphere. Big Dipper, Great Bear, I don't know, I have no idea what these are. So one thing that really struck me in the book was your own experience of inspiration of looking at the stars in Madagascar. And I'd really love you to tell us a little bit more about that time for you personally, looking at the stars, and what that meant to you.
So one night, at 2:30 a.m., I was awake and saw from the window, and I saw the constellation of Scorpius shining so bright that it almost felt like it's going to enter the room. And that time, in that hour, I got these lines: awake each night, I savor starlight, before the blinding sunlight obliterates you from my thoughts. And these two lines then I thought of, how to, when I was in college, I used to have a poem in my pocket. It was a poem called Loxley Hall. Just a few lines from that poem I used to carry always. And it was in Madagascar. And those lines were they always inspired me. For example, for I dipped into the future, far as human eye could see, saw the vision of the world, and all the wonder that would be, and so on. So it was in Madagascar I got the opportunity to read the whole Loxley Hall and realized that it mentions constellations like Orion and the starisms like Pleiades, and it was a poem of 97 rhyming stanzas. So I thought that why not to write a poem like that, like Loxley Hall, and I thought of writing a poem of 100 stanzas, rhyming stanzas, which could take one to all the 88 star constellations visible from Earth. And then I thought of a plot that someone on Earth is looking for one's beloved in the stars, who has left Earth but is playing the game of hide and seek, and you have to find her or him. And so that's how it began. And I started expanding on these two lines which had come to me at night. And the third line came, you were mentioning Orion. I look at the Orion's belt and all my sorrows melt. And then I started having fun with language. And for example, I seek you in the eye of Taurus. Let's ride the bull together, just two of us. And so on. So I had no idea earlier about other constellations. I knew mostly about Orion, Taurus, and the constellation of the Zodiac, and so on. So this is how it happened. And when the book was when I approached the publisher, I realized that Loxley Hall by Lord Alfred Tennyson itself was inspired by an Arabic poem, Mulakat. And I came across the works of fabulous illustrations by al-Rah.mān al-Sufi in his book of Fixed Stars. You can see the cover page also has the illustration of Sagittarius, actually, by this 10th century Persian astronomer. So this is how the book, came about.
Yeah, it's extremely beautiful, and I want to talk a little bit more in a moment about Ulugh-Beg and this illustrated copy of verses which actually of paintings that long predate Ulugh-Beg himself. But do you have a favorite couplet? I've got a couple of favorites in here. While you find yours. So, of course, working on music and having once been a musician and being rather a fan of Lord Shiv in his incarnation as Nataraja, the great dancer of the cosmic creation, let's sing together the cosmic anthem and dance Anand and Tandava in tandem, which I just love. And there's one here, and you probably, I'll hold this up because you may be able to see the illustration, possibly. And that's Perseus, and it's Perseus killing a demon. I glance at Algol, the demon star in Perseus, wondering if it has cast its evil spell on us, which is rather fun. Lots of these are very witty. Tell us about your favorites.
So here is you can see the constellation of Sagittarius, and which is also on the cover of the book. And I gaze at the wise archer Sagittarius, how his love arrows have not spared us. And my love, come back and put me at ease. Restless, I seek you in the bright Arcturus in booties. And on one of my absolute favorite is, I feel your aura in Indus. Will you and I ever become us?
It's really lovely. Thank you. And of course, this book does have these incredibly beautiful illustrations that make it actually absolutely magical. And the illustrations come from a very early 10th century copy. The book itself, the Book of the Fixed Stars, is 10th century, a Persian astronomer. It's a very early copy in the Bodleian Library with these beautiful illustrations. So what's so interesting about this particular book that you wanted to use it to illustrate your poems?
I think it's the illustrations are just fabulous. You can see how beautiful they are. I mean, I came across various illustrations, but found these illustrations by the 10th century Persian astronomer the best. And also, I mean, I found the connection of Mulakat inspiring Loxley Hall inspiring Celestial, and again, being illustrated by a Persian astronomer's works. I mean, very few of us maybe know about this connection about Ulugh Beg and Jaipur, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this idea of things coming full circle is something that's very evident in this book. So the copy, a different copy that's in the Bibliothèque Nationale, was made for Ulugh Beg, the Sultan of Samarkand, in the 15th century. And he was, of course, a great patron of astronomy and astrology, which were essentially the same science in this period. And he was the builder of the massive observatory in Samarkand in the 1420s. And all the calculations that he made, he turned into astronomical tables called Zij, from which various astrological predictions were made. And these were used all over Eurasia from this time onwards. And so, of course, we can't talk about Ulugh Beg in Jaipur without mentioning the great astronomical instruments that were built by Jai Singh II in 1734, which we call the Jantar Mantar, and which are rightly a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And so what's interesting to me is that astronomy and astrology have always been one of those areas where respect has been given to anyone of any religion who did the maths, basically, who did the calculations. So everybody previously used Ulugh Beg's Zij tables in India to make astrological calculations. But Jai Singh, when he was comparing them with the work of an 18th century French astronomer, de la Hire, reckoned they were slightly out of whack. And he was not wrong. So he built the Jantar Mantar to recalculate the mathematics. And he produced new Zij tables for Muhammad Shah Rangila, who was on the Mughal throne at the time. So another lovely connection there. And it's so interesting that all these systems of astrology and astronomy were so close. and then everybody borrowed from each other in the pursuit of something that was to them fundamentally worthwhile. And I mean, my last question to you before I open to a couple of questions from the audience is, I wonder if you see a lesson in that for us today.
I see a lesson here. I mean, Jaipur Lit Fest is organized by, two directors who are from two different continents. And what could be a better example than two of us discussing, a book which is illustrated by, inspired by Loxley Hall and illustrated by a 10th century Persian astronomer. So I think that, this is the beauty and strength of our world, the world we have, where particularly India. We see the whole world as a family, and collaborations with other artists, other poets from different countries, take all the time. So there is also the wisdom of wisdom here in working together. It doesn't matter which country you come from or which continent you come from, but this coming together, the idea of coming together. I think that's what Jai Singh did, and I think this book is a wonderful example of that. Please do get a copy. It's an amazing book. It's a collector's edition. Thank you.
Thank you. And we do have time for a couple of questions, if there are any questions from the audience. Yes, please, the lady there.
Kia ora, we're from... Oh. Hello?
We can hear you.
Okay. We're here from New Zealand, and so I was very excited to hear you talking about Polynesian migration. That's something that I'm particularly passionate about, particularly with our connections. We know that we have connections through to Southeast Asia and through to Taiwan. I was interested in anything more you had to say on that, especially if you know of any links to Indian or South Asian astrology.
It's a great question. One for you, or shall I? So it's a wonderful question, and I am sure that all of these people were trading together. But I would very much recommend if you're here on Monday to go to the session on the ship Endeavour, because the author goes in a great detail into the Polynesian astronomy that was used for that navigation. So thank you. Yes, one question.
I'm sure you've been watching the Southern Cross, which is so visible in the Southern Hemisphere. And
yeah. Thank you. Now, Abhay, in terms of celestial, you're writing about the star coming to your room. So what kind of conversations take place? And of course, you have written poetry about that, and this conversation and the experience of that. And secondly, about mathematical, celestial, and the poetic, and the spiritual dimension also. There is an integral connection between mathematics and the spiritual as a quest of the bridge between the finite and the infinite.
What's the last question, sorry?
So, the mathematical dimension and the astronomy, astrology, and there is a connection between the mathematical and the spiritual in terms of finding different bridges between the finite and the infinite.
Yes. So, universe, the word universe, I don't know if you have paid attention, but it's a Latin word which means one poem. So basically our universe is one poem. And, the connection, I have a short poem called, it's a... quarks, quark of a poet, blossoming in the subatomic space, writing the universe. So the connection is absolute, and everything is whole, as also in the Indian philosophy. Also, you asked about the conversation. So here is a couplet about Scorpius. When I saw Scorpius, Scorpius has a very red star called Antares. And, this star is, is more visible in the whole constellation than other stars in that constellation. So I wrote, looking for you, I score Scorpius Antares, the red supergiant, in a mood to tease. and so on. So it's like, it was the first thing that came to my mind, and which is a distillation of everything, is awake each night, I savor starlight. And that's how the conversation went.
That's absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much.